Okay, so welcome back. This is going to be my second example. This time we're going to look at what happens when you put a negative in front of the f and how does that transform the graph of f of x. And then what do we do when we have a number inside the parentheses? So this right here, this will be my graph of y equals f of x. So we're going to take this again, we're going to take this step by step and recall from the previous video that when you multiply a number inside, like this 3, we're actually going to multiply by the reciprocal. And the reason we do that is because this is in the inside of the parentheses. So we're going to take the x values and multiply by the reciprocal of 3, which in this case is 1/3. And we're going to go inside out. So we have to remember that we're going to start inside the parentheses, then do the next thing that comes outside, which is going to be the negative. And then lastly, we're going to add the 1, which is going to shift it up 1. So we're going to take this step by step, and we're going to do the 3 inside the parentheses first. So we're going to take all our x values on these points and multiply by 1/3. So we're going to multiply by 1/3. So here is 0. If we multiply 0, the x value is 0. By 1/3 we get 0. So we're just going to keep this point here. -3, we're going to multiply -3 by 1/3, and that's going to give us -1. So we're right here. 3 times 1/3 is 1, and 6 times 1/3 is 3. So this was the y value here was 1. We're going to keep the y the same. And we should see that it clearly shrinks, or in some cases they call it compress, the graph of f of x. So now from here we're going to take our next step, which is applying that negative. Now, if we use the same idea of anything multiplied by the outside, we're just going to multiply the y values but keep the x values the same. What that's going to do is, well, here the y value is 0, so we're going to keep this 0. Here the y value is 0, so we're going to keep this 0. But here the y value is 2. So if we're going to multiply, this is a -1. We're going to take this 2 and multiply by -1, which is going to make it -2, which is going to be down here. Here our value of y is 1. If we're going to multiply by a -1, our value now becomes -1, which is down here. Notice that we've taken this point and brought it over here, which is a direct reflection about the x-axis. So applying a negative to the outside of our function creates a reflection about the x-axis. Okay, the last thing we're going to do is add 1. So we're going to shift that up. Yet last time we talked about this being a shift. So we're just going to shift it up 1, which is here. Shift it up 1 here. This point up 1, and this point up 1. And then we draw our lines, and this becomes our solution, or our graph of y equals negative f of 3x plus 1. Okay, I'd like to do one more example here for you. Let's take the same function. So we're going to leave the same function, and I'll just erase this here. But instead, let's do this example as y equals f of negative x minus 1. So we're going to try to figure out, what does this negative inside the parentheses do? Well, let's use the same idea as we did with the previous one. And whenever there's a number multiplied by the x inside, we're going to take that number and we're going to multiply the x values by that number. Actually, we're going to multiply the x values by the reciprocal of that number. Well, in this case, the reciprocal of -1 is just -1. So we're going to take our values of x. In this case, this is 0, so we're going to leave this alone. We're going to take our value of -3 and multiply it by the reciprocal of -1, which is 3. So that now is this point here. So this point became this point. I had a point here too that was also on 3, 0. I'm going to take my x value, which was 3, multiply it by the reciprocal of -1, which is just -1. So 3 times -1 is -3. So what happened? I took these points and I switched them. That's a reflection about the y-axis. So what happens is that when we have a negative inside the parentheses, we're going to have a reflection about the y-axis. So here I'm going to take 6 and I'm going to multiply by -1 in this case because it's the reciprocal, and I'm going to get -6. And we can see that that is a reflection of the y-axis. And then I'm going to connect them so that we can see the blue. That should look just like a reflection about the y-axis. Okay, we disregard the black now because this is our new function, y equals f of -x. And we're going to take that and subtract 1. We always do the outside addition and subtraction last, so we're going to go down 1 in this case. So we're going to move everything down 1, here, 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 and here. And connect. And so you see that when we do transformations in which there's a negative inside the parentheses, we're going to need to do a reflection about the y-axis. Okay? So inside, we get a reflection about the y-axis. Outside, we get a reflection about the x-axis. All right, there you go. You've got 2 more examples of transformations, and I hope this helps. Thank you.